We're back with more Shacknews Awards. We are giving out the award for Best Platformer of the year 2021. This is kind of a nebulous category because there's side-scrolling platformers, there's 3D platformers, hell, there's VR platformers. We're going to allow all of them to be nominated in this category, so it's going to make it even harder to compare, especially because we don't have an awesome game like Super Mario Maker 2 tonight. But yeah, there you go, Greg. I got you one pop off for the awards. Yeah, we'll start with David. I know you like platformers. What you got?
This is the category where I feel like Super Mario 3D World plus Bowser's Fury, that full package shines. If I had to go with one, I would say Bowser's Fury, just because it is the new game out of the two. I still prefer 2D to 3D platformers, but nobody does just pure platforming like Nintendo. And to have Super Mario 3D World, which is really a platformer, like a 2D Mario game, but inflated into 3D, plus Bowser's Fury with a lot of different just ways to move around and explore. I think they added a new move. They added a new move to Bowser's Fury, like a new type of vault type thing that they actually sneaked into 3D World as well. You can do it in that version, but you cannot do it on the Wii U, on the original. Yeah, that game is just really, really tight. Like no platformer's controls are ever as tight to me as Nintendo's, which is why they work so damn well.
Not just the controls. It's a marriage of controls and level design.
Yeah,
Nin-
it sure is.
Nintendo makes platformers in a way where when you hit these jumps in succession correctly, it plays this it almost sounds like music, like
Yeah.
you hit a jump pad, you shoot up, you collect a couple of rings, you land right on a star, like. And as someone who plays a lot of Mario Maker, I
Mhm.
look at how they design all their levels across Nintendo games, and I think Metroid Dread's another fine example of their excellent design of levels and how you marry that with gameplay. That you can make a really, we were just talking about Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. You can make a really pretty game, but that platforming is very floaty and disconnected to me at times compared to the precision that you get in a Mario game.
So here's why I call it the control specifically. I think you're right. It is a marriage, but like I love the level design in Metroid Dread, for example.
Hmm.
But the controls in that game do the level design a disservice oftentimes. And
Hmm.
again, I 100%ed it. I had a great time going after all the secrets, but a lot of them I struggle with more because I was fumbling with the controls. That's never been an issue in a Mario game and probably never will be.
Hmm.
2D or 3D.
David, when you're in
Mm.
love, sometimes you're blind to
Like,
flaws.
have you 100%ed Metroid Dread?
I have not, and you know
Mm.
why? It's because I just don't have the finesse you have to
That
get
is
some of those
true.
tricky tanks.
Yeah,
Nothing to
man.
say. He hasn't beaten
So
Briefcase level 8. It's not like he
Yeah,
stacked it in
I
platform.
don't. I'm not that
speaking
good at
of level
platformers,
design,
There are no clown
but
cars in
no,
Metroid
no.
Dread.
but
The
There are no
Metro
cars.
Dread is just one big clown car.
It sometimes feels like one big clown.
but I would still like
Blake,
to
but
give
to
it
your
an.
point,
I would still like to give it a nomination. I think you guys are spot on. Like nothing's gonna beat a Mario game at platforming. I mean, it's the blueprint.
There's
Uh,
sometimes not
I
so
mean,
like I mean,
well,
there's
yeah. I
sometimes
mean,
a platformer that shows up, and I think there's going to be other nominations in this category besides the two that we've just given Nintendo.
really, like the only thing that could go up against like a pure undistilled Nintendo Mario game is something with different physics. Like Amy, for example, just we've been playing this for years. She likes the stop on a dime physics of Cloudberry Kingdom, and those physics are the way they are because it is a parkour game. You are meant to have exact control at all times. Mario's a bit more slippery because Mario's more realistic, all things being relative in the world of video games, right? But like when Nintendo's on point, that's the thing. Like I'm not a designer, so I can't say they got this wrong. I would probably be pushing Metroid in this category, but like I don't like 2D platforming games or 2D games with platforming with a control stick to begin with. That is a huge hurdle for me. Those games call for really comfortable D-pads. And I get why Dread probably uses the control stick. It's because you have that fine aiming to shoot. But man, like that really, really hurts it. The joystick is at the heart of that game's
Yeah,
control
that's
issues for me.
unfortunate because it's really a hardware issue.
It is.
The Joy-Cons are not great, and the Pro controller is not great. This is a game that would greatly benefit from allowing a D-pad for certain functionality, even if it's just traversal, right?
Yeah.
Even
But
like
then it
alternate
becomes even
control
more,
schemes would
yeah.
have been nice, you know?
Then it becomes even more convoluted though, because you're always going to need the analog to do the Emmy aiming, right? You wouldn't be able to do that, whatever the charge shot aim where you shoot Emmy in the face. You wouldn't be
Yeah.
able to do that with a D-pad. So I understand why they chose to do it this way, but it really highlights the poor quality of their controllers. And that's really weird for Nintendo.
It's such a shift from the Wii U, which I think like the Wii U Pro controller it's missing some functionality, but in terms of feel, in terms of the D-pad, in terms of the sticks, like all
Yeah.
that stuff is spot on.
Better sticks, better triggers, better
Yeah.
D-pad.
Yeah.
Papa John. No. But yeah. Any other nominees here? I have one if no one else does. I think It Takes Two deserves to be in this category.
Mhm.
It's
That's
a great co-op puzzle platformer.
yeah. It's pretty clean too, just as far as like getting from point A to point B goes.
The frustration I have with Ratchet and Clank does not exist in that game. Like that the controls in It Takes Two are very tight
Well,
compared to
Yeah.
Blake made a
Ratchet and
great
Clank.
point in another category. Like the thing is, if you mess up in It Takes Two's platforming, you're not punished for it,
Mhm.
which is a huge advantage, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just
Absolutely.
the amount of the cool puzzle solutions or challenges that are created by having a co-op platformer
Yeah.
is just really something.
Yeah.
And Nintendo
I,
can't I don't think they've ever made a 3D platformer with decent netcode. And that's still the
yeah.
No,
case. That's
no.
still
Yeah.
the case with 3D World and
I
Bowser's
mean,
Fury.
I can think of a couple things about It Takes Two where I feel the platforming is a mess. For example, like the level where you had the hammer and I had the nail, and I just my job was to basically assist you in
Mhm.
doing platforming.
Yeah.
And like you got to do a bunch of cool stuff. I didn't really get to do that much cool platforming with the nail. It was mostly just like aim and shoot
Yeah,
stuff
you were
and
facilitating
communication.
things that I would use to jump off of.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then also on the tree level, swinging around, there's that one point where you have to swing around the tree, and it's
Yeah.
not very obvious. And we
Yeah.
both fell off and had to
Yeah.
retrace our steps.
You did have to circle back. I fell like, I don't know, several limbs at that point.
Yeah,
I think that's
and
just an issue that all 3D I mean, a better informed 3D level design could maybe prevent that, but I think you run into that in general in those games.
yeah. And I'm not, and like I do think it deserves a nomination, but but you gotta put it up against scrutiny, just like Metroid Dread too.
Oh, for sure.
I
Yeah,
think you're right. I think you're spot on about some things not being
polished
um
enough, I guess, or
polished, but also
balanced.
just kind of like obvious. Like you should be able to kind of figure out where you need to go. I hate when it's not a matter of execution, but it's a lack of explanation. Like
Yeah.
you have the
Uh-huh.
execution down, but the explanation is there. The thing about the hammer and the nail is kind of interesting because this is where I love video game storytelling, because you can dive deep into metaphors. The story of this game is a couple having a lot of problems. And I think in marriage, one issue is that sometimes one person gets to do a lot of cool shit and the other is just assisting them. And I like the hammer and nail scenario, like you get sometimes you're just kind of stuck holding the nail, to just keep with that metaphor. So I think that's actually part of it that I would support, but the other part with the tree is definitely, it's just not clear, and that sucks because you know what to do, but it's unclear how to do it.
Oh
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, if this was the best metaphor category, I think It Takes Two.
I think It
Like
Takes Two is
it's
also
a
going to
home run.
come up when it comes to narrative because David, you're kind
Yeah,
of talking about the narrative there and
Yeah,
how it
that's the sort of
informs.
video game storytelling I love. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
where gameplay informs narrative,
exactly.
and I think that is a great way to tell stories. It's something Nintendo does pretty well too.
It
Uh,
is. Yeah.
and Yeah, It Takes Two does that extremely well.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think that just for some color, like that hammer was the wife's hammer, and it's in disrepair because like she hadn't been up in that attic in a while. Like the way that, and even the way they introduce bosses in that game, like it's just like that game's like Karma the game. And,
It's great though, and yeah, the metaphors are fantastic. It's nothing's really that subtle, but the way it's used is brilliant.
Yeah,
I think. Yeah. But I
and
also think it's a good platformer.
yeah, that series of vacuum
Yeah,
puzzle
that's great.
challenges was
It's just
really
fun.
cool. It was
Super
really
fun.
fun and really just that's fun platforming to me. Like I think I had a lot of fun playing that game.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I wanted to nominate it. Anyone else have a platformer they want to? I think Greg might.
Yeah, we're not going to talk about Psychonauts 2 at any given point, or is that more
No,
of
we
an
should
adventure
definitely
game?
talk about Psychonauts 2 in this category.
Yeah, I
Go.
really like that game. That game there's a lot of exploration. There is some platforming, like not as much as a Mario game, but like what has more platforming than a literal Mario game? It's kind of hard to compete with.
This is nominated as the best platformer. What makes it a good platformer?
I think that there's a lot of navigation you have to do. It's not so much like quick reflexes, but like how do I get to that top ledge there? There's a level where you have to pull drawers out with a psychic power and jump on the drawers and pause time to jump to different platforms.
It's similar to It Takes Two in the sense that there's really good puzzle platforming in that game.
Yeah.
And it's not the hardest platformer to come out this year. It's more
not the hardest.
It doesn't have to be. No, it doesn't have to be.
Definitely the value of platforming in that game is definitely in the fact that you can only have 4 psychic powers equipped at one time, and they each present a different aspect of. A lot of them present a different aspect of mobility. Like Greg was saying, there's like the drawers popping out. You have to use a time slow bubble on them, but there's also like one that gives you a double jump and a float in the air. There's one that allows you to zip between like thought points, and like the mix and match of psychic powers to traverse the worlds is pretty impressive in the way that like they have you use that kit.
I thought they could have done a better job with that stuff, honestly. Like, I think swapping out powers into like the shoulder buttons or whatever I felt was outdated. I think you have plenty of buttons and controls to work with. You should be able to put the entire catalog of abilities in there.
They could have done like a weapon wheel solution or something.
That's part of the puzzle, though, right? Figuring out what tools you need.
Yeah.
So I can't fault them for that.
I guess I don't know. It seemed a bit odd the way it was put to me, and I guess it's like no different. Like, thinking about it and kind of working it out as I go here. Like, I guess it's not that different from equipping different weapons in like an RPG or something like that. But at the same time, it just felt a little clunky.
It did feel old. It did feel like an older style of game design when it comes to that. Like, I think that's a valid point. But it's like I do like that limitation though, because to TJ's point, it does challenge the player to figure out the right kit for whatever.
That's part of the
situation.
puzzle.
Like,
Yeah, where Mario is like is a lot about reaction time and multiple ways to get to your objective and doing it fast and feeling like you're really good at and accurate at jumping. Psychonauts 2 is more like David likes. He likes the puzzle aspect of Mario Maker, like figuring out how to get through a level rather than just doing it really fast. You know what I mean? Like, oh, how do I get past this roadblock here? Oh, I jump here and then I jump here and then I do this, instead of just like running through and quickly doing it as fast as possible. So I think that's where it fits in. I think more of a puzzle platformer.
The reason I think you're exactly right, Blake. I don't disagree with you. The reason I let a lot of that stuff slide is because there's certain games where like you don't, and I'm not saying this is the case with Psychonauts 2, but you may only need the bare minimum of a certain genre's mechanics to get by. Like Psychonauts 2 isn't meant to be a pure platformer. It's a really narrative driven game with lots of puzzles, and platforming is just one tool you use to make your way through the story. It's kind of like when people knock Naughty Dog's games for being too basic. Like, I'm not really a Naughty Dog fan, but like those games are really just interactive stories. They don't have to be like revolutionary shooters or stealth games.
Yeah.
So like, I agree with you, like that Psychonauts 2, some of its mechanics and implementation feels kind of dated in a lot of ways, but I also feel like, well, it doesn't need to be shiny and new necessarily for me.
I guess not, but I feel like Double Fine has a habit of making games that should have come out like 1 or 2 generations ago.
That's certainly, for various reasons, that's what happens to them. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess I'm not a fan of some of the level design either. Like when you first have to learn how to connect thoughts, I really just like was like going around in a circle trying to connect some of those thoughts like over and over. And I get you have to figure out the puzzle, but at some point I was just like, I'm not enjoying this, you know? Like, and that happened to me a few times while I was playing, and I'm just like, man, I'm just not really into this. Like I tried. Like I really tried. Like I want to like that game more than I do, but it just sort of falls into mediocrity for me personally.
See, and I contend the opposite in some occasions. I can see what you're talking about with like that thought level, but like I contend the opposite in some occasions. There's a late game level of like that is straight up like Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, if it were a brain. And that level, the not only like the art style of it is spectacular, but the way in which it forces you to interact with its various elements is just so fun and clever and silly to me that I think I specifically pointed that level out in my review because I think it literally is one of the funnest environments that I've ever played throughout the year.
Cool, but
cool.
I would have
are we done with nominating? Yep. Sure. Okay, let's vote.
Wait.
Oh wait.
I did want to nominate Smelter, which is an indie game that came out this year from X Plus. Where so like when ActRaiser Renaissance came out, I was super excited, but as I was playing it, like another game came out that was exactly in that same kind of design, and it was Smelter. And the more I played ActRaiser, the more I wished it was more was more like Smelter, because Smelter is exactly in that same ActRaiser style where it's like top down like simulation building out civilization stuff, and then you go into platforming levels, and the platforming levels in that game are so dang good. It's like Mega Man X style platforming in which you have a dash, you have a melee, you have different abilities that you acquire as you continue to complete levels and also interact with the overworld map. And like you have at first you start with like a rock themed set of abilities like heavy armor, heavy melee, but then you also get different sets of armors that give you like a blaster or the ability to like disappear, like shift as you dash and disappear through objects. And they really use all of those ability sets quite extensively throughout the levels, to the point where it has like these challenge levels that are just like some of the most demanding platforming I've seen in a long time. I've played some briefcase levels, so I was able to beat some of them, but they are really challenging, and I really enjoyed being like having like my reflexes tested as I went through these levels and gained more abilities. And it really does like it did ActRaiser better than ActRaiser this year, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm watching the trailer right now. I'm definitely gonna pick this up, TJ. This is kind of my jam. It looks very cool.
You're muted, David.
I guess it was my turn. I was up for that. I don't want to go too far into this because that's outside the category, but how good is the civilization aspect?
I like it a lot. It's got a it does a similar tower defense aspect to it where you have invasions of enemies, but there are also objectives that you have to do in tandem with those invasions that I think also add to the top down civilization. And you build different types of towers and defenses that have different capabilities, because just as you get those different armor sets, you also get different elements that make your towers stronger against certain types of enemies or weaker against them. So it really makes you consider how you place your defenses around the map.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds like it'll scratch the same itch that Renaissance did for me.
Okay, let's vote. I'm gonna start with you, David.
I'll go with Bowser's Fury.
Okay, Danny, what you got?
Denny's muted now. Whoa, 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 whoa. Wow,
okay.
what a day. Oh.
It's going around. You know, it takes two.
Uh-oh.
I
Now
heard Take
Denny's-
Two.
Did he
Audio
say it
glitched
takes
out.
two? I don't know.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my mic is freaking out right now.
Okay. Say it
Yeah, I
really
said
quick.
it takes two.
Okay.
It takes two.
I was like, hurry. Donovan.
I will go with Bowser's Fury.
Greg is probably Psychonauts 2.
No, I mean like it's a Mario game. Like it's really hard to compete with the platforming aspect of a Mario game. So I'm gonna go Bowser's Fury.
Okay.
He was swayed. I like that.
I mean, it's fair because
Yeah.
Nintendo platforming and giant kaiju Bowser boss battles, folks.
Cat
Just
Mario.
want to throw that out there. TJ.
Staying with Smelter. It was probably the funnest platforming experience I had this year. And
I don't know how I
challenging
missed this. I need to play this game.
Yeah, it looks
Yeah.
awesome.
It seems right up my alley.
Bowser's #1 stan. Wearing a Bowser shirt.
Yeah,
Two
this is
categories in a row.
I said this in a previous category that I want that game stretched out into a full game.
Yeah.
And then
I
I
get
will
that.
vote for it for everything I can vote for.
mild spoilers for a game that came out in 2017. Have you played the final level of Mario Odyssey, TJ?
I haven't yet.
Oh, okay. I don't want to spoil it for you.
I mean, it's
You should.
good.
That's all I gotta say. You should.
No, are you talking about the rejection?
No, I'm talking about something cooler. I don't
Okay.
want to ruin it. And,
Fair enough.
And if you haven't played that part, it's good. It's fun. And it's unexpected. Cappy, right? Cappy. Cappy can take over other things, right?
Oh.
Mario becomes those things. There's a moment where you may become something that's super cool.
I thought you said Kathy. I'm like, what character is this? Kathy.
Cappy.
Okay.
Chocolate,
Okay,
chocolate,
yeah,
chocolate.
okay, I'm with you now.
Bill. What you got?
I have an honorable shout out to Greg for not sticking with his guns against reason. So respect to Greg for changing
Right.
his vote when it was appropriate. But I'm Bowser's Fury. That's it. I'm just Bowser's Fury. It's awesome.
I am Bowser Fury. Hey, Blake.
Man, I love me some Metroid Dread, and if the control scheme was better, it would be getting my vote. But it can't go up against its sibling, Bowser's Fury. Like Mario's controls are tight, and when Mario's platforming is done right, it's the top tier shit.
I'll save my vote for last. Chris, what you got?
Go with Bowser's Fury.
Okay. My vote doesn't matter, so I'm voting for Super Mario Maker 2. No. Bowser's Fury gets it. Bowser's Fury is... No, Death Stranding has horrible platforming.
Yeah.
I would never nominate it for such a category. If this was a category for best tripping over a pebble, then Death Stranding all the way. But Bowser's Fury, it's so tight. That's a game that, like, there's 2 games out right now that you're gonna have to pull out of my hands, and it's Bowser's Fury and Halo Infinite. But yeah, this is, in lieu of not being able to vote for Super Mario Maker 2 again, I will vote for Bowser's Fury. And that's pretty much walking away with this. Like, It Takes Two deserves some love. Oh yeah. Sam
Walking away without tripping.
Ozzie gave it to Psychonauts 2. And Sam also voted for Psychonauts 2. So there's 2 votes for Psychonauts 2. Still lost to the GOAT, Mario. Mario's good at platforming. Film at 11. Bowser's Fury, best platformer of 2021. Congratulations, Nintendo.
What am I gonna do with the award? Nothing. I don't know what I'm gonna do. That's the least of my concerns right now.